My name is Vera Morrison, and I've spent my entire life trying to escape a shadow that was never meant to be mine. You know that feeling when you're standing right in front of someone, but they're looking right through you? That was my childhood. That was my whole existence until the day everything changed. My father was a legend. I'm not being dramatic. Gunnery Sergeant Robert Morrison was the kind of Marine they write about in training manuals, a sniper so precise, so controlled, that other soldiers would go silent when he entered a room. He had this presence, like gravity just worked differently around him. And my older brother Cade? He inherited all of it. The steady hands, the ice-cold focus, the way people looked at him with respect before he even opened his mouth. Me? I inherited the last name and all the weight that came with it. I remember being 10 years old, pressing my face against the cold glass of our garage window, watching Dad teach Cade how to field strip an M4 rifle. Dad's voice was patient, almost tender, a tone I rarely heard directed at me. He'd explain each component like it was sacred: the bolt carrier group, the firing pin, the extractor spring. Cade would nod along, sometimes getting it right, sometimes fumbling. But Dad never lost patience with him. Never. I memorized every word from behind that glass, every measurement, every sequence. I taught myself what no one bothered to teach me, standing in the shadows while they worked in the light. When I was 15, Dad died during a training accident. One moment he was invincible and the next, he was gone. Cade spiraled up, threw himself into the military, determined to become everything Dad was and more. He succeeded, of course. Special Forces by 23, decorated, respected, perfect. I spiraled inward. Mom begged me to go to college, to choose something safe, something that wouldn't break me the way this life broke Dad. But I couldn't. That glass case in our living room haunted me. Dad's custom-built rifle mounted inside, unreachable, with a small plaque that read, "Morrison Legacy." Cade promised me that if I made it through elite tactical training, if I proved I belonged in this world, that rifle would be mine. So, at 22, I enlisted. Not because I wanted to be like Dad or Cade, but because I needed to know if I was invisible because I was weak, or if I was invisible because no one bothered to look. The training program was designed by someone who hated comfort. Only 12 women in a unit of 80, and every single day felt like a test I hadn't studied for. But I survived. Barely. My hands developed calluses on top of calluses. My body learned to function on 4 hours of sleep. And every morning before the sun came up, I'd touch Dad's old dog tags that I wore under my uniform and whisper the same thing. "See me." By week 6, I was still standing, exhausted, covered in bruises that bloomed like dark flowers across my ribs and shins, but standing. Our lead instructor, Sergeant Rourke, was the kind of man who believed respect was earned through suffering. He didn't hate me specifically, he hated weakness in any form, and weakness, in his eyes, was anything that slowed down his unit. Today was supposed to be different. Today, Cade was visiting as an observer, and I was finally going to show him that I belonged, that the Morrison legacy wasn't just his to carry. I had no idea that in less than 3 hours, I'd be lying face down in the mud, tasting my own blood, while everyone I wanted to impress laughed at my failure. It was 6 in the morning, and the sky was crying. Freezing rain came down in sheets so thick you could barely see 10 feet ahead. We'd just finished a 15-mile ruck march the night before, and my legs felt like someone had replaced the bones with broken glass. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was my hands. During rope training 2 days earlier, I'd pushed too hard. The skin on my palms had peeled away in strips, leaving raw, weeping wounds that the medic had wrapped in gauze. Every time I flexed my fingers, I felt this sharp, electric pain that made my vision blur. But I didn't report it. Couldn't report it. Showing weakness in week 6 was basically signing your discharge papers yourself. Sergeant Rourke gathered us on the outdoor range, rain hammering against his Smokey Bear hat, and announced a surprise drill. Advanced weapons handling under pressure. Timed, graded, no second chances. I saw Cade standing with the other observers under a covered area, dry and comfortable, arms crossed over his chest like he was watching a performance he'd already decided would disappoint him. Rourke's eyes found mine in the crowd. "Morrison," he barked. "You're up first. Let's see if that legendary bloodline means anything." My stomach dropped. 80 people watching, Cade watching. This was my moment. I stepped forward, boots squelching in mud that tried to pull me down with every step. The rain was so cold it felt like needles against my face. Rourke handed me the M16, and the moment my injured hands closed around the wet metal, I knew. I knew I was in trouble. My grip was compromised. The gauze was soaked through, making everything slippery. I tried to adjust to find a better hold, but my fingers wouldn't cooperate. And then it happened. The rifle slipped through my hands like water and hit the mud with a sound that might as well have been an explosion. Time stopped. The rain kept falling, but everything else just froze. 80 pairs of eyes locked onto me. 80 witnesses to my failure. Rourke's face turned a color I didn't know human skin could achieve. Purple. Almost black. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, and when he screamed, spit flew from his mouth and mixed with the rain on my face. "You just dropped a $2,000 weapon. You just endangered every person in this unit. What kind of pathetic, weak, sorry excuse for a soldier are you?" He made me pick up the rifle and hold it above my head, arms fully extended. Stand there while everyone watched. 5 minutes. It doesn't sound like long, but with injured hands and exhausted muscles, 5 minutes is eternity. My shoulders started screaming within 30 seconds, tears mixed with rain on my face, and I hated myself for crying, but I couldn't stop. I heard whispers, snickers. Someone said pathetic, just loud enough for me to hear. Then Cade stepped out from under the shelter. My own brother walked into the rain, stopped 5 feet from me, and said the words that shattered what was left of my spirit. "Dad would be ashamed right now. You're embarrassing our family name." He turned to address everyone, instructors, recruits, observers, like he was making an official announcement. "Just so everyone knows, she's not getting our father's rifle. She doesn't deserve it." Something inside my chest cracked. Not broke, cracked, like ice splitting under too much weight. But Rourke wasn't finished with me yet. He slapped me, right there in front of everyone. Rourke got so close I could smell the coffee on his breath. And when I didn't answer his question fast enough, "Your daddy was a legend. What are you?" His palm connected with my cheek. My head snapped to the side. I tasted copper, blood. The sound echoed across the silent range louder than any gunshot ever could. "Drop and give me 100 burpees. Then you're cleaning every weapon in the armory, alone." As I dropped into the mud and forced my destroyed body through those burpees, I heard laughter, and buried somewhere in that cruel chorus of voices, I heard my brother laugh too. By 9 that night, I was alone in the weapons armory. 47 rifles laid out on tables like bodies in a morgue. This was work that usually took 3 people an entire evening. My hands had stopped bleeding, but only because there wasn't any skin left to bleed from. I was empty, hollow, a shell of a person going through motions because stopping would mean admitting I was broken. I picked up the first M16, and something strange happened. My hands started moving on autopilot, disassembly. The movements felt ancient, like muscle memory from a life I didn't remember living. I saw myself suddenly, 8 years old, small face pressed against cold garage glass, watching Dad's hands move while he taught Cade. I'd memorized every movement from the shadows, every pin, every spring, every sequence. While Cade got the praise, I got the knowledge, and I'd held on to it all these years without even realizing it. The first rifle took 52 seconds to disassemble completely. The second took 48. By the 10th rifle, I was at 43 seconds, and my hands were moving so fast they were just blurs in my peripheral vision. Something was waking up inside me, something that had been sleeping for 22 years. Around midnight, Soleil snuck into the armory. She'd been my only real friend in this program, and seeing her face made something inside me crack open. She brought medical tape for my hands and wrapped them without saying a word. Then she sat down across from me and watched me work through 3 more rifles. "Vera," she finally said, her voice quiet but urgent, "do you know how fast you're moving? I've been timing you. 41 seconds, consistently. I've never seen anyone move like that, not even the instructors." I didn't look up. Couldn't. If I stopped moving, I'd fall apart. "Tomorrow's final evaluation," she continued. "There's a speed assembly challenge. The record is 62 seconds. Your brother set it 3 years ago." She paused, and I finally met her eyes. "You could destroy that record, Vera. You could destroy him." For the first time in 15 hours, I felt something other than pain. I felt purpose. I spent the entire night in that armory. Soleil stayed with me until dawn, timing every single attempt. My hands moved faster and faster, like they'd been waiting their whole lives for this moment. Disassemble, reassemble, disassemble, reassemble. The rhythm became meditation. By the time the sun started bleeding light through the high windows, I was consistently hitting 41 seconds, and I knew something that no one else in that entire program knew. I was going to make them all remember my name, not because of my father, not because of my last name, but because I'd earned it in the darkness while they'd all been sleeping. The final evaluation was held in full dress assembly. Every recruit, every instructor, military brass I'd only seen in photographs, and Cade, still there, still watching, still waiting for me to fail so he could feel superior about it. Rourke announced the speed assembly challenge as the tiebreaker for top recruit honors, and I watched Cade's face light up with smug satisfaction. His record, his legacy, untouchable for 3 years. He walked over to me, and I could smell his cologne. Expensive, clean, everything I wasn't after a sleepless night in the armory. "Don't embarrass yourself again, little sister," he said, patting my shoulder like I was a child playing dress-up in a soldier's uniform. I shrugged his hand off and didn't say a word. Let him think I was defeated. Let them all think it. They called names alphabetically. I watched recruit after recruit attempt the challenge. Fastest time was 74 seconds. Respectable, but nowhere close to Cade's record. With each attempt, I felt my heartbeat slow down instead of speed up. Calm settled over me like a blanket. This was mine. I knew it in my bones. "Recruit Morrison," Rourke's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Let's see what you've got." I stepped up to the table. The disassembled rifle parts laid out in front of me like pieces of a puzzle I'd solved 1,000 times in the dark. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Current record 62 seconds, Sergeant Cade Morrison." I heard my brother laugh from somewhere in the crowd. "This should be good." Rourke counted down. 3, 2, 1, go! My hands became something else, something mechanical and perfect. Every insult, every moment of doubt, every second I'd spent invisible, it all channeled through my fingertips. The bolt carrier group slid home with a metallic click that sang through my entire body. The charging handle snapped into place. Upper and lower receivers locked together like they'd been waiting for me specifically. Magazine inserted, seated, locked. My father's voice echoed in my head, clear as if he were standing beside me. Precision under pressure, that's what makes a warrior. Chamber check, safety on, rifle raised. The timer stopped. Complete silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, that presses against your eardrums. The timekeeper stared at his equipment like it had personally betrayed him. He checked it, reset it, checked it again. 39.7 seconds. His voice cracked. New record. More silence. Then one of the brass officers stood up, then another. Rourke's jaw went slack. I watched Cade's face drain of color, then flush red, then turn almost purple. He looked exactly like Rourke had looked yesterday when I'd dropped the rifle. The commanding officer stepped forward. "Recruit Morrison, demonstrate that again." Second attempt, 38.4 seconds. Third attempt, 37.9 seconds. Each time the crowd's reaction grew louder. By the third attempt, people were on their feet. Soleil was crying, her hands over her mouth. I saw instructors shaking their heads in disbelief. Cade tried to slip toward the exit, but an officer stopped him with a firm hand on his shoulder. "Stay. Watch." Rourke approached me with his hand extended. His palm was shaking slightly. "Recruit Morrison?" I was wrong. He couldn't meet my eyes when he said it. The unit erupted. Applause thundered through the assembly hall, but I wasn't listening to them anymore. I was listening to a different sound, the sound of a shadow finally stepping into light and discovering she'd been the light source all along. I graduated top of my class. Not second, not third, first. The assignment I received was for an elite reconnaissance unit, the exact position Cade had been lobbying for before his current deployment. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. 2 weeks after graduation, they renamed the rifle range, not after some distant historical figure, but after my father, Morrison Range. And the photo they hung in the hallway wasn't of Cade in his dress blues. It was of me, mid-assembly, hands blurred with speed, face set with determination. Every new recruit who walks through those doors will see that photo, will see me. I thought that would be enough. I thought proving them all wrong would fill the hollow space inside my chest. And for a while it did. But 3 weeks into my new assignment, Cade showed up. I was at the range, running drills alone because old habits die hard. When I saw him walking across the field carrying a long rifle case, the sight of it made my breath catch. I knew that case. I'd stared at it through glass for 7 years. He stopped 10 feet away from me, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Shame. Real, genuine shame that made him look smaller somehow. "You earned this," he said, his voice cracking around the edges, "more than I ever did." He set the case down and opened it. Dad's custom rifle. The one he'd built with his own hands, the one that was supposed to represent everything our family stood for. Cade's hands were shaking as he lifted it out. "I found Dad's journals," he continued. "After you broke my record, Mom gave them to me. She said I needed to read them." He paused, and I watched him struggle with words he'd probably rehearsed 100 times. "He was watching you, Vera, the whole time. Every single moment you thought you were invisible, he saw you. He wrote about how you'd memorize everything from the shadows, how you had a gift that couldn't be taught." My throat tightened. I didn't trust myself to speak. His last entry was 2 days before he died. Cade's voice broke completely now. He wrote, "Vera has the gift. I just hope she believes it." He knew, Vera. He always knew. Cade held out the rifle, and I took it. The weight felt right, like it had been waiting for my hands specifically. "I'm sorry," he said. "I let jealousy turn me into someone Dad would have hated. You didn't deserve any of what I did to you." I didn't forgive him. Not right then. Forgiveness isn't something you can hand over like a rifle. It takes time. But I accepted his apology. I accepted the rifle. And we sat there in silence with Dad's legacy between us, both of us finally understanding that legacy isn't about who shines brightest. It's about who keeps showing up even when no one's watching. A week later, I was alone on Morrison Range with Dad's rifle. I disassembled it and put it back together. 36.1 seconds. A new personal record. And for the first time in my life, I heard my father's voice clearly. Not as a memory, but as a truth I'd finally earned the right to understand. "You were never in my shadow, Vera. You were building your own light." They mocked the girl who dropped the rifle, but they'll spend the rest of their lives remembering the woman who mastered it. Not because of my last name, because I refused to let their laughter define my story.